Hey everyone, I wanted to walk you really quickly through my basic workflow in Lightroom. So after I've done all my photo shoot, I like to go back and do a really quick tone adjustment to my images before I do anything else. So I'm going to show you how I do that super quick. So we have an image pulled up right here. It's for a company that I shoot for a lot called For Patriots, and this is their Patriot Power Green product. It's kind of like a protein powder. And we're going to do some of our edits to this image. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pick my white balance. I shot a gray card a little bit earlier on this set. So I can go ahead, we can hit the W key, and it's going to give us our proper white balance. We're just going to go ahead and copy this setting. So we're going to hit Command C, copy. I'm going to go ahead and paste it onto my current image. So now we have our white balance set on this image. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and straighten this image because it's kind of bothering me. So I'm going to grab this angle tool. I'm going to find two straight points across this line here. And now our image is straight. So a lot of people work from the top down on these. The first adjustment I always do is I figure out what color profile I want to use. Generally speaking, for me, this is going to be Adobe Color. The next thing you have to pick is your white balance, which we already did. Adobe will tell you should work from the top down on this next section on the panel. I prefer to work from the bottom up. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to shift click the blacks. So I'm going to set my black point. I'm going to do the same for the whites. So shift click and it sets our whites. We can hit the J key so we can see any clipping on our image. So we have a little bit of clipping right here, but that honestly doesn't bother me on this image. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set my shadows. So I'm probably going to brighten the shadows up just a little bit. I'm going to go too far typically, then go back the other way. And then I'm going to find kind of the happy spot that I want it to be at. I'm going to do the same thing with highlights. I'm probably going to get rid of this little bit of white clipping here. Let's see, there it went. I think that's a pretty good starting place. I'm going to continue scrolling down. I'm going to go to the present section. On shots like this, I like to add just a little bit of texture. So texture is bringing out mid-tone contrast on your images. It does it a little bit differently than the clarity slider, and I find it a little bit more pleasing to the eye than clarity. So I use the new texture tool instead. So about 15 is where I usually leave this at. If we want to go ahead and see a before and after of our image, we can hit the backslash key. So before, after, and it looks like we're making all good changes so far, which is what I want to see. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to increase the vibrance on this image a little bit. I really want those greens to pop a little bit more, the yellows, the reds. So we're going to go ahead and do that real quick. I'm going to go way too far. So this is what it looks like if you go too far. I'm going to desaturate it. That's obviously bad too. So I think we're going to set it somewhere around 14. I'm going to go ahead and hit that backslash key again so we can see a quick before and after. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and go to my tone curve section. I typically use a medium contrast tone curve. I'm thinking it's looking pretty good. We'll do that before and after backslash key again. I think we've made good changes so far. It's looking good. So next I'm going to scroll down to the HSL sliders. So this is where you can determine the hue, saturation, and luminance of your image in particular color channels. So one thing I want to do is I want to adjust the saturation on this orange here. And to do this, I can pick up my targeted selection tool or targeted adjustment tool for saturation. So I pick it up, I'm going to put it on this orange, and I'm going to add some saturation to this orange color. I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing for these greens. I think the greens should be a little bit more saturated in this image and just pop off the page a little bit more. So I'm going to drag those up too. Now we're going to go ahead and hit the backslash key and make sure that we've made good changes. I don't want these changes affecting a lot of the other parts of the image. So I don't want it to be affecting, say, the whites or anything that, it's going to make it look bad. So before and after, we've gone good places so far. So that's great. One of the things I do to some of my images, but not all, is I'll adjust the split toning of the image. So this can give you kind of a cinematic look and feel to your images. We're going to play with it on this image, but it's not one that we're actually going to use. But I want to show it to you guys so you can get a feel for what it does. So we can adjust the tones of the highlights and the shadows separately. a lot of times I like to pick a warmer color for my highlights because that's kind of how we naturally see highlights, is they're warmer than shadows. Shadows are going to naturally be cooler in color temperature, and exaggerating that effect can work really well on some images. So right now it's definitely gone way too far, right? But we can go ahead and back this off. So I can back the saturation off to about, say, 15 on both. And it looks pretty good, but because this is such a commercial image, we're not going to do this edit. So we're just going to double click on U and saturation on both of these and zero them back out because it's not a good change for this particular image. So I'm going to keep scrolling down and we're going to go to the detail tab. In the detail tab, it allows you to adjust things like sharpening and noise reduction. I sharpen pretty much every image that I shoot. So the way I've determined that for most of my images, I need to go to 55 for my sharpening level. And I can keep the radius and detail exactly where they are. Then I'll mask this effect on by pressing the Option key and dragging this masking slider. So remember when we're doing this that black conceals our sharpening and white reveals it, just like any other mask in Photoshop. All right, we don't need to do any noise reduction because this image was shot at ISO 100 with a medium format camera at f16. So we're not going to have any noise to speak of in this image. I do like to set the remove chromatic aberration and also enable profile corrections. This lens does suffer from a little bit of vignette and a little bit of distortion. All right, so that is our full basic edit of the image. Let's go ahead and hit the backslash key to see a before and after really quick of this image. So we've brought out a lot of tones, we've added a little bit of detail, we've added some contrast, and overall I'd say this image is in a really good spot for our next step.